As songwriters, it can be really common for us to struggle on the lyrical side of things. And I think one reason for this is that most of us start as musicians. Usually we're musicians and then we're like, I kind of want to write my own music. And then eventually we're like, well, I want to write songs, so I guess I have to write lyrics too. And whether you fit into that category or not, lyrics do tend to be a struggle for a lot of songwriters. So in this video, we're going to talk about 3 quick and easy ways you can ruin your lyrics. So 3 things to avoid if you want to write some killer lyrics. Let's talk about it. The first thing we have to talk about when we're thinking about things that kill lyrics are cliches. These are any phrases that are just overused or any thoughts that are overused to the point that it just shows that you don't really have an original thought. It just is sort of same old, same old. And it sort of has the effect on the listener of rolling their eyes and then tuning out, which is sort of the opposite of the reaction that we want our listeners to have, right? The reaction we want our listeners to have is to turn the volume up, tell everybody else in the car to shh, this is the good part, or shh, this is interesting, this is actually different. Not to roll their eyes, tune out, and turn the volume down and go back to their conversation. Some examples of cliches are things like using the word tonight, and tonight being the important night because reasons, or talking about the world ending, or being, quote, on your knees, probably being followed by something like begging please, calling somebody you're in love with perfect, comparing love to a drug, or using pop culture references, which are extra cringy, especially out of a context of pop music. Nothing will date your music more and make it less timeless than having a pop culture reference. Because a pop culture reference, by definition, will become irrelevant, usually relatively quickly, because you're referencing something that is pop cultural that by next year might be irrelevant, right? If you talk about Twitch in your song, who's to say Twitch doesn't die next week? Or maybe a better example, something like TikTok. TikTok might come and go, just like Vine did before it. So no pop culture references in your songs unless you want to swiftly destroy your lyrics. Another lyrical sin that I see committed so often, especially in pop music, is doubling down on a losing symbol or line or even word. So a great example of this would be Dark Horse by Katy Perry. If you know anything about anything, you know that a dark horse is somebody that is unexpected to win. So when you say a dark horse presidential candidate, there's somebody that everybody thinks, I don't think they're going to win. But I mean, technically they're running, and hey, there's something sort of intriguing about them that means maybe they'll actually make it. Or a dark horse playoff candidate, right? This is a team that is maybe a lower seed in the playoffs. They weren't the best team in the regular season, but they sort of maybe have a really good defense, and their quarterback is really hitting his stride at the right time, and the running game is really starting to pick up, and they tend to play well on the road, and they're going to have to play a lot of road games to make it to the Super Bowl. That's what a dark horse is. But Katy Perry in the song Dark Horse calls herself a dark horse. Specifically, she's calling herself a dark horse in the context of getting a guy to be interested in her. And if you've ever seen Katy Perry, you know that she has never been a dark horse ever in her life. Ever. Like, seriously, I don't think there's ever been a room that she's walked into where she is any kind of dark horse. She could be in a room with other Hollywood celebrities and still not be a dark horse. She's Katy Perry. Or another example of this time not symbolic, but the song Ironic by Alanis Morissette, where I went through the lyrics again. There's not a single thing in that song that is actually ironic. They're all unfortunate coincidences that seem like something that would be unlikely to happen, but that's not what irony is. Irony is when something happens the exact opposite of how you would expect. An example of irony would be something like if you have a team of 5 basketball players playing in the finals, and only one of them is known to be super clutch, and all 4 of the other players play a great game, and the one player that's known to be clutch ends up totally failing his team, and they end up losing the championship. That would be an example of ironic, because the one person that you thought and had reason to believe would not let you down is the one person who did let you down. So those rants aside, the main point to take away here is we don't want to double down on a point that wasn't really a very good point to begin with. If something is a losing hand, you don't want to double down on that. So in the case of the dark horse example, why would you keep going back to this dark horse thing? How did nobody tell Katy Perry and probably the 15 other people that wrote that song with her, hey, do you know what a dark horse is? you're not a dark horse. Or if anybody said to Alanis Morissette, this is dumb. Literally nothing you're talking about is ironic. Something else that will quickly destroy your lyrics are when you go too far with the hyperbole. Now, hyperbole is an interesting thing because a little bit of hyperbole often helps. For example, if you were in a relationship with somebody for 6 months and then you write a song about the breakup and how much it hurts, you don't want to end up saying all these months we were together because that sounds kind of pathetic. So you use a little bit of hyperbole and say all these years, right? So somebody's imagining that you were like married for 20 years and then it fell apart, which is much more tragic than something that falls apart after 6 months. So that would be an example of hyperbole put to good use. But hyperbole put to bad use would be when you say something that nobody believes, that just makes something unbelievable and silly, and again, has sort of that eye roll response to it. An example I can think of this is Bruno Mars's Grenade. Look, sorry to inform you of this, Bruno, as if you would ever see this video, but nobody on the planet has ever or will ever believe that you would actually catch a grenade for anyone, or step in front of a train for anyone, or take a bullet to your brain or something like that. You're not going to do those things. We all know you're not going to do those things. They're so hyperbolic that it just sounds silly. It sounds pathetic and desperate. So don't say that kind of stuff. It's okay to have slight hyperbole, but don't go so far with the hyperbole that by the end of it, the lyrics are just cringe and kind of pathetic and just like, oh, come on. Nobody buys that, because ultimately our lyrics do need to be something that people could believe. So it's okay to use some hyperbole and take some artistic license, but you don't want to go so far with this that it ends up becoming, again, something that's super cringe or just not believable, or something that people would roll their eyes at. Beyond just not ruining your lyrics, obviously, I think we all want to actually write great lyrics and get better and better as lyricists. And one way I've found that has been really, really helpful for becoming a better lyricist is to break it down into steps, because a lot of times people will actually stare at a blank page and just try to basically improvise lyrics. But we can barely improvise sentences. Some people trip over their words when they are just speaking, much less trying to write something poetic, trying to say something poetic just off the top of your head. But the good news is there's no reason for us to have to do that. And if you break down lyric writing into different steps, that makes it so that each step can be an easier step, and so that your ultimate end product can be something that is more consistently really something that you can be proud of. So if you're interested in breaking down your lyric writing process into smaller steps that are much more easy to accomplish and will end up having a much better final result with your final lyric that you can be proud of, then be sure to check out my 6-step lyric writing checklist. It breaks down the lyric writing process into, of course, 6 steps, and will help you to be able to more repeatedly get some really good lyrics and not rely on the muse so much. Because oftentimes, if you're trying to improvise lyrics and you're just staring at blank pages, hoping that the muse gifts you with beautiful, amazing words off the top of your head, the reality is that most of the time, you're just not going to get that. And then a lot of your songs will not end up having good lyrics because you're relying on something that is largely luck. So you don't want to have to do that. You want to be able to rely on yourself to write great lyrics without needing to rely on something that is external to yourself. You want to be able to be self-sufficient in your ability to write great lyrics repeatedly and to not have to rely on the muse. So be sure to check it out. Link in the description down below. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate every single one of you. I'll talk to you in the next one.